watching your reports from later on this evening. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Paul.
All right, joining me now to discuss where RIM fits in today's competitive landscape is Brandon Mensinga. He is a senior analyst at IDC Canada. So let's talk about RIM, Brandon. I mean, obviously, they've got this playbook up that's kind of been hit and miss. They've been talking themselves about this big internal transformation they're going through, moving to this QNX platform, BlackBerry 7.0, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What's going on with their products vis-a-vis Apple, Google, and some of the others?
Yeah, so I think, as you said, they're in a transition period right now. I think the transition from BlackBerry OS to the QNX OS is critical for them. And I think the problem right now is that we have a gap between what are considered to be legacy devices in terms of the user experience versus what we're hoping to get with QNX in 12 months. So we have this, time period of a gap where RIM has to get through this. They have to get to QNX and have to get on a competitive platform which is equal or better to iOS and equal or better to Android.
Do they have time, though? Because, I mean, even legacy, I mean, it's hard to imagine that some of these products RIM has put out are already considered legacy products. But nonetheless, do they have the time? Because we know Apple's going to be coming out with a new version of its iPhone. We know they're going to be coming out with new iPads. We know Google's not sitting around waiting, and some of these other players aren't waiting. Do you think RIM has the time that it needs to sort itself out?
Yeah, for sure. So I think they do. They have a good cash balance sheet. They have good profits. They still have international growth. They still have a runway for growth at this stage. So I think, they do have time to make changes, and they are making those changes. I think with the acquisition of QNX last year, the acquisition of TAT, a user experience company based in Sweden last year, they're putting together the right pieces to come up with a platform and an experience that's going to match what we see on iOS.
What's the biggest challenge out there? Obviously, the iPhone has done amazingly well. Is it still Apple?
I believe so. I mean, Apple has set the benchmark in terms of the user experience. Android has come alongside of that with a comparable user experience. And I think at this stage, BlackBerry still lags. So when I talk about a legacy platform, I'm really talking about the fact that iPhone and iOS was released several years ago. Android was released several years ago. But yet BlackBerry is still on this user experience platform, which is not on par effectively. That's my reference to.
Okay. There's lots of folks suggesting that maybe RIM can't do it with this management team in place. This co-CEO structure doesn't work. The board's under fire for the way it does or doesn't work. Do you think they can do it with these folks in charge?
I think so. They've come to the party with these folks, and I think going forward, they're at a critical point now where they have to really gather the troops and make sure that everyone's confident stuff is going to happen. And I think the leadership there can do that. I think in parallel to that, they need to ensure that the software leadership of the company, I'm not talking about the co-CEOs, I'm talking about the actual software leadership of the company has to be there, and they have to ensure tactically that they execute in the next 9 to 12 months for QNX and come up with that great user experience, because the bottom line is that if they don't deliver in 9-12 months and the user experience for QNX is not good or it's not on par, they're going to have a massive problem. So I think the software leadership for the company is critical to ensure tactically they can execute.
Do they need a home run, or can they get by with sort of a revamped version of the playbook and some interesting new products, but they're not exactly home runs?
Possibly, but I think what will not work is incremental releases. So I think BlackBerry 7, which is coming out for the back-to-school season, is not going to solve the problem. I think they'll still be considered a great QWERTY messaging device, but again, they're not going to be on par with an Apple iPhone in terms of the touch user experience.
And what about the playbook? What do they do with that? Because it got bad reviews when it started, that it was really an incomplete product. Yes, looks good, will look good once they finish it. Is that thing a failure, or can they revive it? Can they make it work?
They can revive it. So I think they went to market too early. I think the consensus view is that the software was half-baked, but the reality is that there is a tablet market, and I think they can establish a foothold. It's really all about ensuring that they're delivering, a complete product, but also a great user experience for that product. And I think they haven't achieved either at this stage with Playbook, but I think, again, if they're focused in the right directions, they can execute. I think they can be there.
Was it as bad as those reviews led us to believe? And the reviews almost took on a life of their own. And the reviews are kind of moderate, and then it was like, oh, it's horrible, horrible. It went from sort of not bad to terrible, awful, horrible. Was that fair, or do you think there was a bit of piling on there?
So I think to some extent it is unfair. I think there was a piling on from the media and from the analysts as well. And I think we're seeing that with the stock price too, because the bottom line is that they released their last quarterly results, and they were okay. They still had a healthy profit margin. They still had international growth, but yet they were hammered. So I think there's this pile-on mentality. I think what's happening is that the analysts are looking for flaws, and when they find a flaw, like they did last quarter, they jump on top of it, and it hurts the stock price. But I think the actual reality is not quite as severe as everyone is making it out to be.
But that's fair game. A lot of tech companies have gone through that, right? That's not exclusive to RIM.
No, fair enough. I think so too. I mean, the bottom line is when somebody accelerates dramatically over the course of several years, which RIM did, you get to a peak, everyone wants to tear you down in terms of, analyst coverage and whatnot, I think.
All right, well, Brandon, we've got to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
Perfect, thank you.
Brandon Mensinga, senior analyst at IDC Canada. And coming up next, a bull-bear debate on RIM's stock and where it's headed. Stay with us.